It's more of a graze, quite a heavy graze actually looking for it. However, we get straight underway with Armoured Combat Gloucester against Primus. They're two fairly evenly matched teams. It's hard to call. That's a great move, that! A big thrust from Primus, thumping the ACG fighter down. Two go down in the centre left of the list there. And this is some good movement. Slightly clumsy there. However, nice footwork from the ACG fighter, who is chased down by the Primus fighter at the back of the list. Now on the right here, you can see some big strides coming down on the ACG fighter, who is able to break free. And that's some great movement. A huge strike coming in, but they do both go down at the bottom of the list there, which means there is just these two, and Primus take the first round with 2 fighters remaining. So a very energetic first round between Primus and Armoured Combat Gloucester. Some big strikes there, and 2 of the ACG fighters were caught out by the power of those Primus strikes. But still, the first round, the teams have to get themselves organised and get themselves together. So the fighter's just being reminded not to get up until the marshal authorises it. This is something which it's not a deviation from the rules, but it can easily be forgotten in a fight. People want to get up and restart as soon as possible. So again, the same aggression shown by Primus, but that's a nice movement there. ACG fighter already down on the left-hand side of the list. But still some great movement, and the Primus fighters hounding down the ACG fighters, who goes crashing to the ground in the right-hand side of the list, which means that now strikes can be taken down at the bottom right-hand corner, whereas there are other clinches still occurring in the middle and to the left of the list. And there's some good leg work here, holding on in the bottom right. Of course, you can't see because of the marshal. And be careful of the ground. And fighters, a lovely takedown there on the left of the screen by the Primus fighter. A great hip toss. So in the bottom right hand corner, the ACG fighter is not going down very easily. However, I think it's out of the list now, and the marshal has said that that fighter is no longer counted, and that concludes the second round with a resounding victory to Primus. Okay, you rejoin us now for Armoured Combat Gloucester versus Invicta, a fairly evenly matched fight. And you can see there's some great movement. There's a weapon being lost by one of the ACG fighters, who has to rush back to get it. Of course, it can't be brought to him, or the movement of the squire assisting with the weapon cannot change. But there is some great aggression shown on the right hand side there, and an ACG fighter has already been taken down. The big strike and rush coming in from the Invicta fighters, and there's a great charge which has come in there, however gone straight against the list. Now, this is good work from Invicta. Now working down the fighters, and that is another ACG fighter who has gone down. Still, you have at the top right hand corner of the screen and the bottom where the clinches are happening. So Invicta, with the advantage of numbers here, need to capitalise on it, and you can see the way the halberdier has actually changed the position to work on the strikes on the back of the ACG fighter, who manages to stay up from the attack coming in. But Invicta needing to use their free fighters a little bit more effectively, but this is good work from them, and they're bringing it to the further towards the centre of the list, which keeps it open. A great head strike there from the Invicta fighter, and that's an attempted trip on the top corner. Now the movement has come up, and there's an Invicta fighter gone down, but they've both gone down there. So Invicta still with the advantage of numbers, and you can see just in the corner you have a lot of pressure coming down on the ACG fighter, and I think the marshals have allowed that to continue. I think it was broken there for a moment. So Invicta in control, but still not able to take down the ACG fighters. You can see just in the corner. And, just from the live stream, you can see the bottom left-hand corner. I'm sorry, where action is happening. There's a lot of weight coming down on the ACG fighter now, who is taking a lot of weight, but still managing to stay up somehow, and that has been called. So, victory there to Invicta, and quite a good round there, fairly evenly matched. So some really good striking from Invicta, but something has to be said also for the ACG fighters, who are really withstanding quite a lot of punishment, but giving as much as they got. A very aggressive team, ACG. So I think gluing together, as we saw with the women's team earlier, a bit more of that, and I think they could come back in this next round. So there is a marshal's warning for language used, which of course is part of the rules. It's a sign of sportsmanship and respect. So there'll be a verbal warning against armoured combat Gloucester. Well, of course, these things can slip out, of course, in the heat of the moment. As we get it, the second round underway, and again a careful start in the center, whereas on the sides it breaks off, slightly more loose in terms of tactics, and already there are two fighters down. There is the Invicta fighter being told to take a knee because he was down, his weight was on him as well. A great charge there that comes in, and slightly ineffective, going a little bit too high on the lunge, which of course just charges the fighter into the list. So still even at the moment. That's on the right hand side, and indeed on the left hand side, all the clinches move down towards the corners, but of course that's just going to make their task all the more difficult when there is more support there. Some great leg pressure and a great push out there from Invicta, who get the ACG fighter out on the right hand side of the screen. So an advantage for Invicta. And trying to go for aggressive leg sweeps there. You can see this impressive work. Didn't have the full impact this time, but it was a great vision, a great idea. And no urgency on the Invicta fighter as his teammate gets out of a grapple. So the fighters, in fact, just talking with each other to check that they are okay and okay to carry on. And the strikes coming into the head of the opponent, but he does have the support of the corner of the list, and that is going to make it all the more difficult for them. Whereas on the left-hand side, there is a little bit more free movement. Well, the ACG fighters managing to get a little bit of space. A lot of resilience shown there, but Invicta not capitalizing on their advantage as it is, although it's understandable that fatigue will start to settle in. The need to show some aggression a lot more quickly, and in order to get the two fighters down who go in the corner there, so an Invicta fighter and ACG fighter both go down. The Invicta fighter checks that he is okay, as that has been called as the end of the round by the secretary and organizer of the event. As we go now to round one of Armored Combat Gloucester in the black and red against Three Towers in the black and orange. Already there is one ACG fighter down. I think there's just down to some bad footing there. However, there are two who go down at that, and that is fairly clumsy fighting, but of course the list on the grass does become more slippery at this point, and there is another ACG fighter who is on the ground, appears to be in some discomfort. So Three Towers now with an advantage, and in the left hand corner hammering down on the ACG fighters, and now they get the chance to show their strength, and that is called. So a big victory there for Three Towers, their first round in this tournament. Well, it was fairly rapid, but I think the Three Towers tried more to smother them, and of course there were two fighters, one ACG and one Three Towers fighters, who went down towards the back of the list. But they may have been a fall. Still, I think the teamwork that I'd been mentioning before that was kind of lost, and I think the ACG were kind of taken by surprise to some extent. That said, fairly evenly matched, and I think we'll see a difference in the approach from ACG, whereas I think the Three Towers will be happy to continue in the same way that they started, but because they are using more halberds, they do need to check their distance. Of course, when they're in clinches, the only thing they can use them for is pulling down. They can't hack and use it as a teamwork instrument. And still, again, going straight to the right of it, and good footwork from the ACG fighter in the middle, who manages to stay up. And there's a great hip toss, superb takedown there from the ACG fighter, who cheers himself on that, and rightly so. That's an outstanding takedown. So, Armoured Combat Gloucester with an advantage. They've moved to the sides now, and there is a breakaway. You have the loose fighter who is charging quite ineffectively, but does get round the back of the Three Towers fighter. This is good pressure now from Armoured Combat Gloucester, who lose a fighter of their own. And the a loss of the gauntlet means that the Three Towers fighter is out. Two have gone down by the top left. So it is still very, very close. On the right, there is a clinch, which is very close in itself, and you can see the amount of pressure that the Three Towers fighter, the enormous fighter, is putting on the ACG fighter, but not managing to pull down. It is held on well to the side of the list. Whereas on the left-hand side, you can see a very interesting position there, where the ACG fighter is trying to push the Three Towers fighter down, and somehow manages to stay up. But this is going to be difficult for Three Towers now. So, Armoured Combat Gloucester, the aggressors in this round. And there's some big kicks and strikes coming in. Three Towers somehow still standing up, but on the right there is still that clinch, and there's a big Swerve movement from the Three Towers fighters trying to get the Armoured Combat Gloucester fighter down. Still the two ACG fighters on the left focusing on that one fighter, whereas there's now been a breakaway and this will come charging into the ACG fighter, again thrusting into the side of the list. So this means that it is all happening in the same area. This is going to make it very, very difficult, and what they will do now is try to put some of the pressure as the marshal calls for a break, and will now cause the restart of the fight. It's fairly unclear as to why, and there's a big thrust down now. The Three Towers fighter manages to avoid tripping over the grounded fighter. So this moves now to the more open space, but of course the fighter's not wanting to give away too much air and too much possibility. Of course, Three Towers having a height advantage. So there is a buckler which has gone down now. Therefore the Three Towers fighter will have to gain a weapon, and he goes for an axe this time. Interesting choice given the numbers, but there's a grapple in the middle and a weapon has been lost already. A great toss throw, and that's very good work from the Three Towers, and now this fight is very, very close. So the Three Towers fighters punishing the ACG fighters now, who'd aim for a takedown. It's very difficult to see for the marshal what exactly is happening there, and the marshal telling them to carry on. It hasn't been stopped. Well, right down to the wire this is coming. There's a great pushing from ACG, and they're trying to get wrap his leg around the fighter, and that's going to be difficult to negotiate, although a good pull and a lot going into this from the ACG fighter, who can't quite get those strikes in fact neither, because of the shape of this clinch. But there's punishment coming in. The Three Towers fighter comes down and they're both ready to go out, and that's a great victory there for ACG. What a superb round. Well, that is possibly the most exciting round we've seen and the closest round we've seen in this tournament so far. Right from that start, that epic takedown, which I'm sure we'll see many times again. Three Towers really deserved a lot there, but they just could not overcome the resilience of Armoured Combat Gloucester. So, and we have the first fight of the tournament, which goes to the first fight of the men's, which goes to the third round. It's interesting to see such different tactics, but both pulling out results, which means that questions can be asked about how they will approach this third round. I think both teams will try to go for the same thing, although watch in the middle at the start for the runner fighters. In the bottom right of the screen you have the runner who took down the fighter in the air. I think he'll try to go for that again, but the thing is, it's you can't let this sort of thing go to your head. Yes, it was an epic takedown, but they don't happen very often like that. So it's going to be interesting to see if he goes for it again by risking it, which could bring results, or if he works more with his team. Either way, ACG fought an incredible round and thoroughly deserved that victory. So I think there's just a minor adjustment to some of the armor of the ACG fighter down towards the bottom right. We have to be careful about these things. There are a lot of loose laces, in fact, so all fighters need to be very aware of this. Not been too many armor failures, but of course, as we all know, the attention to these details is extremely high before the start of the fight. This is I remind, this is a Bohurt League tournament, therefore there cannot be any mistakes with the weapons check and the armor check, and of course there's a responsibility of the fighters to ensure that their armor is sufficient before the fight. But again, there have been a couple of loose pieces of armor from exposing hands. A helmet came off earlier, an elbow came loose, but generally it's been fairly tight. So a huge charge now. Oh, that takes them both down. It was a great idea, and that's a nice takedown there for Three Towers, who burst straight into the side. Well, that initial charge was risky, and it was almost a suicide move. It was fairly predictable, but it was done. And there's some great aggression coming through here. Now, the ACG somehow managing to stay on their feet. Superb work in the bottom right-hand corner. The fighter now in all kinds of trouble, however. But keeping his footwork was extremely impressive. On the left-hand side, a huge lean from the Three Towers fighter, who appears to be having trouble there. Might be pushed down, is somehow clinging on, but has now gone down. ACG now evening it out. So it's very, very close at this point, but the Three Tower fighters seize the approach of the ACG fighter. It's big movement. Now the ACG fighter has gone down. This is very close now. Three Towers may come out with the victory here, but they've been told to continue fighting. There's been a stop for some reason, not clear why. The marshals told them to continue fighting. It's an advantage for Three Towers at the moment as they switch the loose fighter, who will start hacking away on the ACG fighter on the left of the list, as you see. But there are a lot of loose fighters on the ground, which could prove very difficult in terms of movement. So crossing from one clinch to the other has been made that much more difficult. Great footwork, however. It has now gone down, so in fact both fighters have been called out because the Three Towers fighter lost his armor. So, having achieved that takedown, we are left with one clinch remaining. And that has been called, well, again, another really, really close fight. And that is a victory for Three Towers. So close. Well, we really got a show out of these two teams. Very evenly matched. A lot of desire to fight, will to win, and determination. Well, you've got to love these 3-round fights. Quite good. So, can Gloucester get anything back against White Company? As they have the halberdier who goes into Lukasz Kowal, and they break off that runner. But there is a very good takedown there from the number 2 of Pavel Korczak, as they start to wear down Armoured Combat Gloucester. And you can see the aggression of White Company. This is very, very good fighting. However, ACG not afraid to get stuck in, and there's a leg going in. However, it won't last very long, and the round has been called. So a clean victory there for White Company. So it's hard to place ACG in terms of what they need to change approaching the second round. But one thing for me, and it's easy for me to say this, but of course if they keep a bit closer together they might have a better chance against White Company. It was absolutely right of them to try and hold down the runner, as they did in that last round. So in terms of those tactics, I think they're right to do so, and they should maintain that strategy. But the fighters on the sides need to be closer into each other. They're going to rely on that. Listen, you can see on the right hand side, they're a little bit loose and they could have bunched up together. And see right then, the White Company fighters have managed to split them up already. And as you can see, there are already ACG fighters going down. The White Company fighters straddling the fighter to get him down. Very effective, and that is it. And that is a very, very quick victory for the experienced White Company fighters. Pole arms. And I think if they break through that, and there's an early rush from the Primus fighters, and a great clash that they get into from the start there. There's already a Primus fighter who has gone down, and that's great teamwork from the ACG fighters and good movement coming from the back to go down at the same time on the left-hand side of the list. And Primus not showing the same aggression that they did in their 5 versus 5. But this is very good work from Gloucester, and two of their fighters are taken down, and there seems to be a trip there. Some unfortunate footing there from the Primus fighters, but at this point, as things get closer, I do fancy the chances of Combat Gloucester and Three Towers, who have some issues of communication, but they're in good position now. Again, the Gloucester fighters are able to choose their clinches that they go into with the polearms, and this is where they will be most effective. Big strikes coming down, and they have the advantage of more fighters fielded. Again, another issue of the larger fighter 12 versus 12 is when you have fighters on the ground, they do create problems for clinches moving back and forth. So a lull in the action means that they can readjust their positions. As you can see, it is in just 2 corners of the list at the moment. It's hard to see in the left-hand corner, but there are 2 Primus fighters who are caged in there. It's impossible to see them on the left, whereas you have a single fighter on the right. So an advantage here for ACG and Three Towers as one of the Primus fighters breaks loose on the right and takes a charge for it. And that's a great move! Superb takedown there. And very, very impressive work. And that is called... I don't think it should be. And that is... Okay, the fighters have been counted. Yes, of course, there were the fighters down. Marshall has counted them. And there was a great takedown at the end there. However, the Primus fighter was surrounded by ACG and Three Towers, so was not able to fight through that. The organizer has been asked to step out of the list. Unfortunately, they were not able to make the repairs in time, and therefore he forfeits this round. So we go into round 2 of Primus Invicta versus ACG and Three Towers. And again, another aggressive start. Primus now pushing ACG and Three Towers right back. And so big movement, there'll be some takedowns in the middle, I suspect. And yes, there's an ACG fighter who has gone down in the middle there. There are a few bodies in the center, which is going to create real problems. So nice movement and great aggression shown by the Three Towers fighter to the right of the screen, but it is matched and evened out, and although the blows are quite sluggish, he's still taking strikes to the head. On the middle there, the room for maneuver is very limited, and you can see Primus fighters on the left hand side outnumbering the ACG and Three Towers fighters, but there is another Primus fighter who has gone down, and ACG fighter has gone with him. So it's still fairly even. Oh, that's a big takedown there. Effective sweep. Primus now a lot more collected in their approach. And working not just on the strikes, but also leg sweeps, which of course you can't see so much from this angle. But there are more white tabards trying to wear down the big Three Towers fighters. Weapons lost on the marshals, of course, who have a difficult task of observing each of these moves So there's a count on them, so big punches coming in from the Three Towers fighter. And that's a great move, and really the ACG fighter is at full stretch. So this is nice work now, good teamwork from Primus and Invicta on the right, and the round has been called. ACG taking the same line as they had the first time round, which was very, very effective, and already Primus fighters at a huge risk there has gone down straight away. Quite careless, and a lot of bodies have gone down in the middle. However, the Primus fighters are bringing about the numbers, and there's a huge charge of coming to the middle there, putting the ACG and Three Towers fighters in a difficult position. Fighters now going down straight away. This looks to be quite a rapid round, and they are now locked against the side of the lists. In the bottom here, you can see that their ACG fighters outnumbered by the Primus fighters. So once again, a lot more collected. Even though there were early mistakes from Primus, there's another good takedown from a leg sweep on the right of the list. This means that you have these big Three Towers fighters remaining, and there's still a few ACG fighters quite loose, using the halberds to good effect. But again, with so many loose fighters on the ground, it's difficult to move quickly. Well, there haven't been many unforced errors. A great takedown on the left there from Primus, who are now well in control of this 12 versus 12 fight, and the marshal has called it. So as the marshal makes his count, we already know the result. In Italy. And there's a big charge here for this final fight of the day. And what a fitting tribute to this tournament, and the Three Towers and ACG are hammering into White Company. They do have the advantage of numbers, so White Company will have their work cut out, but they're a big team to go against, and that's a great takedown there. So already we have two of the fighters from ACG and Three Towers who have gone down. There's another one who has taken a knee, and this is good work here from White Company. And the strategy is paying off very rapidly indeed, and already we've got several fighters being taken down, and a great shot to the back there on the left hand side of the list. Huge rush come over for the side. The White Company, when they go for their rushes, they are much more careful. They do not charge them with knees. They go for strikes to certain parts of the armor first, and that is a first round victory for White Company. Notice before how when you have charge from one side of the list to the other, fighters have a tendency just to charge them, but it's ineffective with such a high list. People don't fall out or break them or fall underneath them, or it's very rare that they fall underneath them. White Company, when they charge, they go for a strike. And that has proved effective, as we saw then. One rush from one side to the other, ended in a strike which took down the ACG fighter. But it was a great burst at the start of that fight. And I half think the White Company were expecting that. And of course, it wasn't a bad tactic, and when you have the numbers against White Company, you do have to go for it. So, although I don't expect the same start to the second round, I think there'll be a bit more caution from ACG and Three Towers. I think they do well to go forward in the middle and spread out the White Company fighters to the sides early on. So already the marshals are ready for this second round, and there is a more cautious charge in the middle there, but the Three Towers are charging back, almost destroying part of the list there, thrusting the White Company fighter into them. Now there is some heavy skirmishes in the middle, but you've got three fighters now down on the left hand side. This frees up the White Company fighters, who are charging right back into the ACG fighters. Big strikes coming in, and there is a White Company fighter cornered in the bottom. This is much better work, and there is a loose armor, meaning the ACG fighter has to go out. There's another thrust down. This is great work from White Company, who have seen the challenge come straight to them, and they've defended it well. They've fought off the initial aggressive attack from ACG and Three Towers, and now they have the numbers and only a few remaining ACG and Three Towers fighters on their feet. And this is how the White Company fighters have taken control and won the fight.